Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The Vulnerable. Today, me and Kimberly are joined with Ty, um, and yeah, it's going to be a really cool conversation. We've rescheduled this a few times, so it's good we can get to do this today. But yeah, I'm going to let Kimberly introduce herself, then Ty can introduce himself after.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly. For those of you that don't know, I'm the person behind strong underscore self love on Instagram, and I'm also a content creator on the YouTube channel, The Waiting Room Entertainment. I have a series called Self Love Corner where I talk about everything living with life with an autoimmune disease, a chronic illness in your 20s, and navigating through life with that. So, thank you for having me, Mason.
It's great to have you again, Kimberly. Ty, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, definitely. Well, my name's Ty Martin, and I actually have muscular dystrophy and use a power wheelchair. So that's kind of all of my disabilities wrapped into one disease there. But my background as far as career is in engineering. I got a PhD in biomedical in 2019, so right before the pandemic basically shut everything down. So that was kind of the focus, and then I actually had a gallbladder go septic that I had to get out. And so that was a whole nother process. It sent me back, and allowed the disease to kind of progress. So I've been transitioning basically in the last 2 years into, more of a social media, like digital creator space, focused on disabilities and other vulnerable populations.
Okay, so it's so with I can't remember what you said the first time because it was a quite a long name. Could you kind of talk a little bit about that? Like how like you got it and basically a little bit
Yeah.
more about what it is.
You like more like in the early, like when I first
Yeah.
started kind of experiencing things, or just the whole timeline, maybe a little bit,
Yeah.
just a brief.
Yeah, a bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So with my EMD, it actually the doctors were thinking I had it back when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And it started out with just some weakness in the legs and muscles, and my speed, wasn't quite what the other kids around me, was. So that, was a sign right away that there's something going on muscle wise, and so through the years it just gradually progressed. And in high school, actually, that was when I first started using, a power wheelchair. So it was, you have these phases where things change rapidly in a short amount of time, and then you have longer phases where it's gradual, and you maintain most of your strength. So it just gradually became, I had to have help just walking long distances to, now I use a power chair exclusively, to pretty much go anywhere. So at this point the muscles have kind of, they have some strength, but they're still, nowhere near what they used to be. And then that kind of, merged into like my college life and trying to get, the research done that I needed for the PhD and coordinating, all the different things that you need to be successful while also balancing, the MD and the symptoms and trying to, you know, cope with that as well. So, it took a while to kind of find the right niche and area, that I could go into, especially after this last setback, So now I'm in the process of weaving in everything I've learned from my disability journey, trying to share it, with others and kind of give an idea like this is the day in the life of someone with muscular dystrophy. So that's a brief, kind of description of how I got here.
Okay, so it's something that you experienced quite young, and then you might have days that are easier than others, and you might have days that are harder than others.
Right. No, that definitely is the case. I know that some people experience more, significant swings and, ability. Mine it's fairly consistent day to day, but there are days that things just don't function the way I need them to. So yeah, it's a balancing act, and I also think that MD and a lot of other diseases, like it's not a one size fits all. You can't put everybody into the same basket, because like the progression is going to be different and their support system, there's just so many variables that impact that. Not to mention we're just different people, first of all. So Yeah.
I have a few questions about that. Is it passed down, or is it something in your genes, or how is the process of getting diagnosed?
So I think the most common, so it's a mother-linked genetic disease usually. And so, one of the X chromosomes basically has a mutation that impacts the protein that's missing with muscular dystrophy. So I think that's, the most common way. And I think there's probably a few other different scenarios where it can occur, but in general, they do like a biopsy sample, send it to a lab, and they say, it's missing this gene or whatever. And so, yeah, we can, kind of know what the cause is, even though you can't really, I mean, once you have that information, there's minimal treatments, right? So,
Yeah. Do you also experience like pain? Is it everyday pain, or is it throughout pain, or?
yeah. So since I went into ICU, the pain thing really became an issue because I ended up losing so much strength, and then there was actually a hairline fracture in my hip, and I was basically bedbound. I didn't get into my chair or do anything for about 40 days, so um, the all of those things contributed, to quite a bit of pain, and there's still, it's kind of a chronic thing at the moment with, with that right leg, but it's come so much, further towards healing than it was, that I'm gradually, able to reduce, like the pain relievers that I need, or, like I can do transfers with my caregivers more rapidly than I did when I first got home, so it does, I think now it has become a very consistently painful thing. It just depends what activity, I'm doing.
So sorry to hear that. And I know that pain changes some people. And by looks of it, you're still, I mean, despite your circumstances, you still have a
Yeah.
very attitude. And so I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, no, it's I have, dark moments with it, like many people, but um,
Yeah.
all in all, I think since that hospital stay, I'm a little bit more just comfortable with accepting the whole situation, because when you have that amount of time just sitting with your thoughts, you kind of go through uh some kind of change for sure.
Yeah, so it seems like Kimberly says, you're quite positive about it. Like is that what you do? Like you said about you spend a lot of your time raising awareness on social media about it. Is that something that came quite late on? Is that something most recently you've been doing that?
Yeah, I've always been, well, fairly tech savvy, I think, as many of us growing up in the time frame we did, but I got into um, several different things with social media, but I never really, dug in as far as creating content or sharing. It was more like, well, I'm going to use Twitter to get news and Facebook to see family pictures, kind of that traditional, method that people needed. So for me, like I was super late to the creator party. So, in the last probably year and a half, I've really been working on things like Canva to try to make it look appealing, and then also try to deliver, a message that's consistent with, kind of my mission statement, so that kind of, I'm trying to tailor it to that, like this idea that whether you have a disability, whatever age you are, size, any variable that defines, a unique person, I'm like, I want to somehow connect that as well. Like, if you have a disability or a disease, that's 100% like part of who you are and what you do, but it's not, there's so many other, pieces and features and things that influence, a person's experience. So, that, I just think that the power of social media to, kind of express that and bring together people from, all over the world that are in the disability space, it's kind of, it's evolved rapidly, and I think I'm catching on, but I was for sure later to that side.
Yeah, I think I was too. I
Yeah.
only I only started doing it social media. Well, for lockdown, really.
Right.
So It
Yeah,
seems
that
forever ago now, though, doesn't it?
yeah, the lockdown definitely impacted a lot.
Yeah, like how was it hard for you during the lockdown?
I think the first year or two, it was just like almost shock, trying to come to terms with the fact that I already, with a disability and doing research that was mostly based on computational, methods. Like I was used to working at home part time, but 3 or 4 times a week, I would be going, basically 45 minutes to the campus where the main labs are and everything, and so that commute was basically gone at that point. Um, and of course, I thought, well, this is going to be perfect. I can have like triple production, because I'm not leaving the house as much. So, but then I came to find out that that's really like I needed that cushion of time, going to campus and back each day, basically to just, kind of see nature and drive and get my thoughts refreshed, so that was a huge thing, like mental health wise, that was more of a hurdle than I thought it would be. When you're already isolated and then what you have left is gone, that's a drastic shift. And then my mom actually, she was an elementary school teacher, and so all of their stuff was remote too, and based on where I live in New Mexico, our internet is not always great. So, we're competing, between her remote teaching and my remote research. And, so that was another layer of issues there. So, it was just hard and fast and trying to pivot and change everything. Obviously, I think many people went through that same or similar process with it. But yeah, that changed so much.
Yeah, it's
And I don't know how
fucking
it was for you guys, but
yeah, it's hard because in the lockdown you never thought no one thought we'd have a pandemic at all, and and that's purely for reason because people are very dirty. I think some people are dirty in the world, and if we was all clean, we're fine. But but yeah, it was for me. It was a quite hard time during the lockdown. I felt maybe certain people in charge didn't do things right. Um, but that's a kind of a mess, and but that's probably could do a whole different podcast about that. But but yeah, certain rules were told that were very complicated, um, and it was hard enough for people to understand your personal issues and your reasons and although I did like it when people weren't allowed to go out because it kind of made them feel like maybe how maybe we feel a lot of the time anyway. And but it's a very hard time. What about for you, Kimberly? What was lockdown for you?
It was awful. Like you guys mentioned, I was actually in the hospital while everything was going down. So like, 1 minute I'm with my family, they're able to come up. The next, it's like you have to get discharged because it's worse for you in the hospital than it is out there. And it was such a scary moment because it's where it's like, okay, so I need to be in the hospital to get treatment, but I also need to stay home because if not, I could possibly get worse. I didn't want to catch COVID. I thank God I never have, knock on wood, but it was so hard. And then, so once I got discharged from the hospital and I was sent home, it was so hard to actually get a doctor to see me for, getting medication wise. And it was just a whole mess. The only good thing was that I live about 30 minutes from Atlanta, which is like the major city here in Georgia. So that's where all my doctors are. The drive there was phenomenal. We would get to Atlanta in like 25 minutes versus with traffic and everything, it's in an hour and a half. So that's the only good part of it, but everything else, it was horrible. Going to grocery stores, because I am disabled, they would let the elderly and the disabled go in before it opened to the public. So I mean, there was good, there was ups and downs, but I mean, it was awful.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot with the hospital type things because, even though I went in about a year after, COVID was at its, highest peak, it basically changed things to the point like, the nurses and everyone didn't really understand how to help somebody with MD, like being able to transfer, move, do all of the scans, everything needed there. And, and for me, I actually wasn't able to talk or communicate at first. So, you're at the mercy of the knowledge that the medical care has, and like you don't have any influence or say, um, on, even though your own body better than anybody, like, it was very difficult to get them to the point where they understood. So, there's that dynamic, when you're in the hospital to get care, that's one thing. But if you're there long amounts of time with people that don't know how to help manage, your disease and everything, like it was just absolutely miserable for the first week. And then I had to get creative and figure out how to get one nurse to understand I was trying to write, with a pencil, because obviously I couldn't speak. So that, once I did that, it was like that opened the door because I could communicate and write out like, well, these are the steps, to actually help me turn on my side or get out of bed or whatever. So, that hospital thing with COVID restricting, visitors, and that it makes it so much worse when hospital and surgery is already, tough enough. But yeah, that resonated when you were talking about, your hospital
Yeah,
experience.
it was definitely scary because I'm blessed enough to every time I go to the hospital, my family's always there with me. So it was super scary. Like all of a sudden they cannot come up. And what else do you do in the hospital is like watch the news and you're seeing people go insane and running for toilet paper. It was just not a fun experience. But look, we're all here today and we're all
Right.
talking about
Right.
experiences. I'm just happy we all lived through that and we can laugh about it and joke. And it's crazy what we go through.
Yeah, no, I agree. You want to have, you know, some like silver linings to experiences like that, and just surviving it and moving forward and figuring out how to, overcome and keep living. That's the thing we're all doing, I think, now. So it's good to be, at least that stable.
Yeah, it's good that everyone here is doing better than was it now when the pandemic started was 2020, so 4 years ago, which doesn't seem that long ago, really. Um,
Honestly,
and
it feels like it happened a year ago still to me, but
yeah, yeah, and still sometimes today people, you may do things maybe in fear of that and what will happen during that time because it was a very hard time. And like you say, if you go in the hospital and you see other people there, you don't really want to be in that environment in case you do catch it because it could be like fatal. Um,
right.
especially if you got like an illness or that, and it depending on as well how much you take for that, it may be very dangerous for you.
Yeah.
So it's hard, and even sometimes people at the hospital won't understand you. So sometimes you're very worried about who you talk to who you talk to about these kind of things. But even today, stuff like this happens. Maybe not the pandemic, but similar
Yeah.
kind of instances at hospitals and stuff.
Right. No, and I think there were even, instances before of things that maybe were swept under the rug or not at the forefront of that medical experience, and then COVID happens and you see all of the flaws, and I mean the infrastructure and like managing, like the staff and everything. It was just a nightmare, and it seems like something you would read in a novel, right? Like something that's kind of just not possible, and then it happens, and you're just, you know, trying to hold it together through the whole process for sure.
It's very hard, but I feel like um like you said earlier, everyone's different, everyone experiences it in different ways. Um some people unfortunately some people with chronic illnesses don't take it as seriously as they should.
Right.
But I guess you do have to still try and live your life as much as you can, but you've also got
Yeah.
to be as careful as you can as well. I think.
Right. No, I totally agree. And even though I've kind of loosened up a little bit on going, to some different public places, it's still, you have that in the back of your mind, and you're always trying to kind of make sure that you have the right distance, away from crowds wherever you're at. So it's this kind of fragile balance between, like, well, I'm going to take a few risks and do things that because that's like my life I'm living, but also, I got to be aware that, you can't really recover near the same as anybody else with COVID or any other virus or bacterial infection, any of that.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's bad really, but it's almost like it's a memory, isn't it? Like it lots of people's minds that COVID didn't exist when it did, but that's what it feels like to a lot of people that it never really happened when it did. And
Right.
like loads of people I don't know what it's like where you guys are from, but over here in the UK it's almost like as soon as all the restrictions were gone, it's almost like everyone's back to normal, like nothing happened.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I feel like too, and it's I just don't understand how, people were able to adapt and kind of like reflect and be like, okay, this is what it looks like when there is a big scare like that with health and disease. And I think they just couldn't wait to just disregard all the masks and the wipes and like, everything, and like, well, the government's not, keeping it as a pandemic, so we're just gonna go right back to our crazy, like capitalist lifestyle or whatever. But I think for some there's a little more learning, I hope. But yeah, it's just strange to me how quick everyone is to just disregard like it never happened before. And how are they going to be ready for the next one if there is another one? Like, if they just go right back, So I don't know. It's frustrating to kind of observe from our perspective, I think, and see how people just kind of disregard, you know, the information they learned.
Yeah. No, like over here in the South, oh my gosh, people were so upset when in like 2020 when masks were required. They would be like yelling, they would throw fits in the grocery store. Like the world is scary enough, and to add that anger, and then they'd be like, it's my right, I don't have to wear a mask. I was just like, I'm still wearing it and I don't care because I know
Right.
it's, but it's just so
Yeah.
insane. And, the government tried to make it mandatory for your safety, and then people would be angry. So, I don't know.
It's rough because you almost feel judged in places where you're wearing a mask, especially now, because people are just like, either they think you're sick and you have it, or you're like, what's wrong with you? Why are you still, following those rules? So I don't know.
Um,
I don't know what the answer is, because it's hard to change so many opinions, especially, that are deep rooted for whatever reason. Like, I just, the mask thing seems so insignificant of a sacrifice when you're trying to, save family and like people that are at high risk. So it's it'll drag you down actually if you pay too much attention to how people are handling it now, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to get a shirt back in 2020 because I have really bad, terrible acid reflux. So, when I would cough, I'd be, I was crying, trying not to be like, I didn't want to be coughing on people or people to think that I had COVID. So my eyes would
Mhm.
be red. I'd rather like have a hard time than like let people know I don't have COVID. So I wanted to buy a shirt that says, I have acid reflux, not COVID, but it was just a like that you have to find some humor in some dark times. So it
Oh,
was just something to like help me cope, I guess. But
I like that idea. That's kind of a way to express also like how you feel, like
yeah.
how you think that things should be done. So yeah, I like that. That's a little humor and a little bit of a teaching moment for anybody looking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really good, and I think yeah, I just look at and like even today, like people will just, like, I don't know. I don't know if it's a normal thing. Like I analyze it, but if it, like, you know, when people eat stuff and let's say they go to the burger van and they give them the money, they eat the burger, they don't wash their hands when before they touch the money, but they don't watch it, and then they pick up the ketchup. Everyone's touched that, and it just amazes me. This is why we got in the pandemic in the first place, because everyone is so careless about it. And I mean, I'd understand if they hold the tissue or something, but yeah, there's. I'm not surprised we got in the pandemic in the first place, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got another one in the future.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys seen the movie Contagious or Contagion or something like
I've
that?
heard of it. I've heard of it. And then I know I saw some memes back, around 2020 when it was, but I haven't actually seen it.
Have you, Mason?
I've heard of it. I haven't. I don't know if I've seen it or not. No, I don't think so.
I haven't seen it in a while, but that's kind of, the whole premise is like basically that movie was in like 2012. And so, when we came out with the pandemic, it kind of showed the trace of how someone got sick and how it was passed down over here, passing through. He was coughing at an airport, and then he was coughing on his family, then his kids went to school, and that's how it gets around. So it all starts with one person.
But I've 2011 it was. But yeah, I watched a similar film. It was like it was around the pandemic. Did the pandemic just gone, and it was about like this nursing home, like all the old people, I think were dying, and you had one old person left, and then the worker that worked there, and it was interesting because they would phone the emergency services, and the emergency services would be like, no, sorry, we can't, we've got too many people. So like exactly what happened in our pandemic, that they kind of recreated that, and it was it was sad, but it was very true. What was happening.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know about you both, but at the time, at least for a year or two, I was constantly looking, at the numbers in the state and the country and the world, and then, getting quite a bit of anxiety, just, thinking like, when is this going to end? And for me, I was in a rural community out here in New Mexico. Like, we were one of the later ones to start getting it. And so, like, you're feeling like the walls are slowly closing in around you. And, it made it difficult to really focus or pay attention on anything else. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was hard because it was always on the telly, always on your phones.
Yeah.
I had to turn the news off at one stage because it was just getting too. It was repeating it all the time, and it was saying
Right.
that a certain amount of people have died a day. And I didn't really understand why. I mean, I understand maybe once they could have done that, but everyone dies every day, not just because of COVID, but for loads of different
Right.
reasons. And we don't get a number on that every day. But I don't know why they've done it for COVID. They could have just said loads of people getting dying, then saying how
Right.
many, because it was a lot of numbers they were
Yeah.
showing, and it don't, like you say, just get really anxious just seeing that all the time.
Right. Right. And for me, even to this day, like listening to just the regular nightly news programs here, it's all negative, it's all bad, and it gives you the details that really don't. I mean, it doesn't help you like necessarily solve the problem, or it just feels like an attention grabbing away, just talking about like these numbers, throwing it out and making it a big production and everything. So I feel like that's a very watered down version of the news, and it's really good at making people, freak out about things, at least in my experience.
I agree. I agree. But I think before we go, Ty, is there like I just want to ask, is there any like advice that you'd give to other people that have got who have your um condition, illness condition, any advice that you'd give to anyone else, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've found that, you can be pretty creative with like where you want to devote your time, and whether it's what type of work you're doing, or if you're going to go into other areas. So for me, it's like, you got to be willing to pivot and kind of get creative on what you can and want to do, but also, do you love that thing, right? So it's a journey. Like, it's not, it's like, not you're not a statistic, right? Like, all people with MD don't die at 25, or so it's just like, kind of respect your individual self and kind of listen to like your internal compass a little bit on which direction you want to go. um, and I think learning kind of the way you can self-advocate the best way, especially with with MD, and there's other muscle diseases, right, like ALS, where you lose your speech much quicker. So I think if you can be a little proactive with kind of knowing things that could happen, and kind of gearing yourself up for, well, what if this job got taken away, maybe I have these other 3 options I'd be interested in. So I think just that willingness to kind of, that human instinct to survive and adapt and make the best of your situation and environment, and it's not all positive. I mean, like, that's not realistic. Like, you go through Instagram on certain pages, and it's just all like, yes, it's fine, it's going to work out, like, everything is just happy. But I think there's a balance there. You need to have a little bit of the kind of that serious, logical kind of thought there as well. So those are kind of some upper level things I think about a lot, and just like remembering that you're human like anybody else. Like, you have needs and wants, and you contribute to society as as well or better than others. So that's kind of how I try to look at it.
I think it's a really good way to look at it, and some really good advice, because, like you say, it's important to focus on the positive and the bad things, because otherwise, like you say, it wouldn't be all true. But thank you for sharing that, Ty.
Yeah.
I
Kimberly,
love that.
anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, like, I love basically what Ty said, was be your own advocate, learn how to be your better advocate for yourself, because you're the one that lives with this condition. Doctors may see you for like 30 minutes if you're lucky, but at the end of the day, you have to stand up for yourself. My number one thing, advice for anyone that the illness is, wait, can you see me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My number one advice is, don't go on Google and like research what is this and how much life expectancy do you have? Because
Yes.
that's the worst thing. And I did that. I got diagnosed at 12. So, that's the first thing I did. And I was like, no, I thought I was going to die by like 15, and I'm 27. I'm 27 now, and I'm grateful to be here, and everyone's life looks completely different. So I agreed with you 100%, Ty.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I did want to say too, like, age is, I know that there's that cliche, it's just a number, but for me, like, I didn't really become a self advocate until like 33, so that's, I think if you can figure it out sooner, great. But if you haven't, you still, you can learn the tools and the skills you need to be independent. So
Yeah, I know there is diseases out there and illnesses that are that they say you can only live quite young, but I've spoke to people that say that, and they're much older. So I think I've heard personally it's a load of rubbish.
yeah,
All this, when people say you can only last, that's just an average. So I think
yeah,
if you do well in yourself, and you still do things, you eat what you can, because
right,
it's not always about eating all these diseases. There's so much more to it, but
right,
do what you can. But yeah, I agree with what both of you are saying there. Um,
yeah.
yeah. But thanks, Ty, for coming on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
We did it in the end. So we got and done it.
Yes, 3
Yeah,
time zones, and we made it.
it was worth the wait.
It does awesome. Um,
Definitely.
It's been really fun. But to anyone listening and watching, we hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. Join us next week for the next episode. which could, I think it's going to be the penultimate episode, if there is a final episode where there's a reunion. So it could be the last one. It could be the second from the last one, but we'll find out then. But yeah, thanks to Ty, thanks to Kimberly for coming on again, and we'll see you in the next episode. But guys, have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you. You guys as well.
You too. I enjoyed it.